What do you think is the biggest barrier to high performance? Gamers, stick around because I'm going to walk you through it when we come back in just a minute. All right, gamers, here's the deal. It's time to ditch the 12-month calendar to avoid falling into what Brian Moran calls the Brian Moran, if you don't remember that name, we talked about him a few days ago. He's the author of the 12-week year. He's a high-performance expert. What he calls the high-performance trap is the annualized thinking trap. That is, in fact, the biggest barrier to high performance is annualized thinking. Okay, so what I want to talk to you about today is I want to talk to you about the 5 biggest pitfalls of annualized thinking, and then I want to share what I believe you need to do instead. Okay, so the whole purpose of our talk today is to really get you to understand and really believe, right? I really want to anchor this belief into your mindset today so that you never have to wrestle with it again. And the belief is that annualized thinking is the biggest barrier to high performance. Okay, so let's talk through the 5 pitfalls of this. Okay, so pitfall number 1, when you're operating under annualized thinking, is you are conditioning your mind to believe there's a lot of time to get things done, right? Makes sense when you think about it. You come into the new year, it's January, you got 12 months to crush out all of those goals. This is a trap. To condition your mind to believe there's a lot of time, you are walking yourself right into a trap. That's pitfall number 1. Pitfall number 2 is that when you are operating under the 12-month calendar year mindset, what we're calling annualized thinking, you are moving through most of your year lacking a sense of urgency, right? You lack a sense of urgency. So what happens? You start to fall behind in your goals by the end of January. That's most people, right? By the end of January, they've already gotten behind in their goals. Most people are still behind at the end of March. 90 days into the year, they're still behind, but guess what? It's okay, right? They've conditioned their mind to believe, hey, I've got 9 months of the year left. And so what happens is you lack a sense of urgency. This is a pitfall to high performance when you're operating under this annualized thinking approach. Pitfall number 3 is that you are going to sabotage the value and the importance of executing on a daily and weekly time frame. You know, if you were to study millionaires and billionaires and high performers, what you come to understand is they get laser focused down to the week, into the day, and even down to the hour, and even down to 5-minute increments. Okay, so what happens if you are operating under annualized thinking and your mind is focused on the 12-month calendar? It's just really, really difficult to truly value the importance of getting down to those 5-minute increments. It's very difficult, if not impossible. That's pitfall number 3. You're going to sabotage that ability in your business. Pitfall number 4 is that you unknowingly will be creating a destructive psychological state of wishful thinking. Think about that. When you are operating under an annualized thinking approach, you are unknowingly creating a destructive psychological state of wishful thinking. You've got 12 months. And so as you get behind in your goals in the first 30 days of the year, you're a wishful thinker. Hey, I got 11 months left. Next thing you know, it's the end of February. I'm a wishful thinker. I've got 10 months left. It's the end of March. Next thing you know, you're into the fall. It's August, September. Now you're starting to panic. Now you put all this stress on yourself. Now you're living in anxiety, and you're pulling your hair out, trying to achieve all these goals that you said you were going to achieve over the course of this 12-month calendar year, okay, because you're operating under the annualized thinking approach. This is a trap. This is the trap. And then pitfall number 5 is ultimately, when you add all these things together that we've been talking about, pitfall number 5 is that you are going to underperform. And that's really what this is all about, right? We want to perform at the highest level. Every minute of the day matters. So pitfall number 5 is you underperform. Even those who will tell you they've planned out their year and they've hit their goals. You know, people who would maybe hear this message and they'd say, yeah, that's most people. But, you know, I work off of a 12-week or a 12-month calendar and I've hit all my goals. I'm still here to argue that person is underperforming. If I were to work with that person for 12 months and I were to help them eliminate this annualized thinking approach to work off of the approach that I recommend, I can guarantee you that person would outperform the goals that they believe that they have been achieving in the 12-month calendar year. Guarantee that 100% of the time. Okay, so what's happening when you are operating under annualized thinking and you're becoming a victim to these 5 pitfalls is you're creating a destructive cycle of underperformance. Year in and year out. Year in and year out, you're underperforming. Now, what this is going to do, ultimately, this is going to create a disempowering psychological state that's going to block you mentally from believing that you have what it takes to be extraordinary and to go out there and achieve high levels of performance in your life. And remember, everything starts with your belief, right? You either believe what I'm telling you on this training or you do not believe it. Everything starts with your belief. So when you're operating under annualized thinking, you're creating this a disempowering psychological state because year after year after year after year after year after year, you're underperforming. You are wiring into your psyche this belief that you're just an underperformer. And that has catastrophic effects on your ability to go out into the world and to really create the extraordinary in the world as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, that you're really capable of creating. It's going to be blocking you from achieving your best out in the world. So the question is, all right, what do we do? If we're truly going to buy into this idea of ditching the 12-month calendar and never again focusing on annualized thinking, what do we do? Well, I alluded to the answer in preseason training day 2, I believe it was. But the answer is we are going to start focusing on cycles. This topic is so important, I wanted to go deeper on it today with you because this is one of the big game changers for me in my business, and I've really just borrowed this from the millionaires and billionaires that I studied. Okay, the answer is to move from annualized thinking to thinking in cycles. Okay, now where does this come from? Where does this thinking in cycles come from? It really comes from professional athletes. Okay, this is a training strategy that athletes use to improve performance, and it first started back in Eastern Europe when athletes were training for the Olympics back in the 1970s. So the principles of cycles are these. There's 3 key principles. The first is focus. What operating off of a cycle does is it allows you to increase focus. Makes sense, right? The second is concentration. When you're working off of cycles, you're not only able to laser in your focus, but when you're actually working, you can concentrate at a higher level. That's principle number 2. And then principle number 3, when you're working in cycles, what you're doing is you're overloading on a specific skill or discipline. Why do you want to overload on a specific skill or discipline? It's going to empower growth, right? Because we know that everything that's alive that grows, it grows through tension. So we have to willingly overload on a specific skill or a discipline so that we can empower growth. That's the catalyst for growth, right? So the idea in the sports arena is that an athlete focuses on one skill at a time for 4 to 6 weeks and then moves on to the next skill. That's how athletes look at the approach, the cycles approach. Okay, so how do we mimic this approach to cycles, this strategy? How do we mimic this in our business so that we can begin to achieve consistent breakthrough results? Well, here's how we're going to do that. Instead of looking at your year as 12 months, I'm asking you to look at your year as 16 weeks. Okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to turn each of our 16 week years into a game to make it fun. So instead of having 1 year over the course of 12 months, we're going to have 3 years over the course of 12 months. And each one of those years is going to be 16 weeks. And we're going to turn this into a game because we want it to be fun. Now, why is fun important? Well, for one, I know myself included, most people can add more fun into their lives, right? And if we spend a majority of our lives working, like we tend to do as entrepreneurs, it should be fun, right? So there's a good argument for fun. But even more significantly than that is it's important that you understand how you feel drives your actions. Remember we talked about this with the prosperity formula? Your thinking is going to drive your feelings. Your feelings are the linchpin to all of your actions. Okay, so how you feel matters. How you feel drives your actions, which leads to your results, right? So there's some deeper significance to really placing priority on making the things you're doing in your business and your life fun. Fun really does matter, okay? So here's my encouragement to you. My encouragement to you is from this point forward to start getting your mind into thinking about cycles. To start looking at your 16-week year like an NFL football season. Okay, so the 16-week year is going to break down like this. The first 2 weeks of the season, or we could call it the year. I'm going to use the word season because I like the sports analogy. The first 2 weeks of the season are going to be your preseason. You know, in the NFL, the football players in the NFL, they start in the preseason. NFL football players are actually in the preseason right now. They are preparing for the season. So in our 16-week season, we're going to spend 2 weeks preparing for the season. That's what we're doing now. Then we're going to spend 12 weeks during the season, and we're going to be running at full tilt. That's when we run out onto the field, right? And we're trying to score as many touchdowns as possible, taking that ball down the field in our business to score as many touchdowns as possible during that 12-week cycle. And then we're going to go into the off season. Okay, the off season is going to last 2 weeks, and that's where we're going to rest. We're going to recharge. We're going to refocus. We're going to celebrate our wins. We're going to express our gratitude for all of the breakthroughs that we had during the season. And we're going to get ready to come back and do it all over again for the next season. Now, by looking at your calendar, you know, as a 16-week season, if you do the math on that, that's going to give you 3 full seasons in the 12-week calendar year, right? So that's 48 weeks for a full 12-month calendar year. What that does, if you're doing the math with me here in your mind, that leaves 4 weeks for what we are calling your oops factor, right? The oops factor. This is where life gets in the way. You know, maybe you get sick. Maybe you got to go on a business trip. Life just gets in the way and tries to throw you off the rails. Okay, so this is where the oops factor is going to protect your thinking from you self-sabotaging because you're trying to be a perfectionist. So we want to throw in that 4-week oops factor just to give you a little wiggle room in your season if something happens that you weren't planning, which we know it's going to happen, right? That's Murphy's Law. It's going to happen, okay? Now, one thing I learned as an officer in the military is that no plan ever survives contact with the enemy. No plan's perfect. No plan ever survives contact with the enemy. That's where the oops factor is going to give us permission to not have to get it perfect. Okay, so here's your execution step. I want to encourage you right now, as you're listening to this training, to make the commitment to play the game with me during this season. To start developing that execution muscle around this idea of cycles. I know some of you have been listening to these trainings and you haven't truly gone all in your mind. I mean, maybe you're 90% in, maybe you're 95% in, maybe you're 99% in. I'm telling you that 1% makes all the difference. Going from 99% to 100%, it truly does make all the difference when we're talking about becoming a high performer. So for those of you who are not quite to 100%, I'm encouraging you with every ounce of my being to make the commitment right now to play the game with us during this next season, the season we're in now, and to really make the commitment to developing that muscle, that muscle of thinking in cycles. Okay, so this is training day 3 in the preseason, right? We're just getting started, which makes this perfect timing if you're ready to make a big commitment to your success. This is perfect timing for you. All you have to do is make sure that you're part of our private Facebook group. That'll keep you in the loop with everything that's going on. And again, the private Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Rebel Investor Game. Check it out, request access, and get into the season with us. Now, the last thing I want to share is, why do you need to do this? Why do you need to do this? The number one benefit, I was thinking about what's the number one benefit, and here it is. It's to rewire your thinking. To rewire your thinking. The results that you achieve in your life, in your business, they're a direct reflection of the actions you take. A direct reflection. So it's your thinking that's going to drive your actions. That's why we meet here every morning. That's why we have the season, because we are committed and passionate around the idea of disrupting your thinking, because we know that the faster you can rewire your thinking, the faster you're going to be able to change the results in your business and your life. And today, just like every day, is all about rewiring your thinking, disrupting your thinking. Today we happen to be talking about changing how you think about planning your year. Okay? Now, here's where most people go wrong. Most people will simply focus on what? What do most people focus on when things aren't going the way they want them to in their business? Most people will focus outward, and they focus on their actions. So most people think to themselves, okay, I've got to change my actions because something's not working here. I'm not getting the results I want to get. So what they do is they reverse engineer, which is actually a smart strategy. They're going in the right direction, but they're only reverse engineering to their actions. And your actions are still outside of you. This is where most people go wrong. What happens when you just focus on your actions is you are creating incremental improvement. Incremental improvement. You're improving at a slow pace. Okay? Contrast that with when you change your thinking. When you change your thinking, everything changes. Consider that for just a moment. When you change your thinking, when you go inward and you adjust your thinking as opposed to focusing outward and just looking at your actions, you're going to create big breakthroughs in your business. Why? Because your thinking will your actions will naturally come into alignment with your thinking. And that's ultimately what you're after. You want your actions to always be in alignment with your thinking. So if you're not achieving the results you want to achieve, which most people are not because they're living off of this annualized thinking approach, then what they really want to do is bring their thinking, is rewire their thinking to this approach of cycles, and then their actions will naturally come into alignment. Like the actions will just kind of fall into place because now you're thinking in cycles. Make sense? This is the key formula for creating big breakthroughs in your life. So again, the big key takeaway for everyone today is that if you want to create those big breakthroughs in your business, don't focus outward on your actions, focus inward on your thinking. Okay, and how do you do that? Start thinking in cycles. And there you go, gamers. That's our training for today. Hey, thanks for your trust. I want you to know I don't take it for granted. I want to encourage you to get out there. As always, be extraordinary in your thinking. Be a liberator. Be the light on the hill for everybody who's on this adventure, who's in the trenches of this adventure, and who's looking up for the light. Be the light on the hill. Never forget, I love you all. Not in a weird way, of course, but I do love you if you're here for the first time. And I'll see you tomorrow for preseason training day 4 as we continue to move forward into this next season. I'm so excited. I'm so honored to have the opportunity to be playing big in the world with all of you. And hey, let's go out there and let's crush it today in our businesses. Until tomorrow, Rebel Strong.